Greetings everyone, I'm Kevin, and let's compare some Swedish versus English translated titles. So as pretty much everyone knows by now, a lot of books are translated into other languages. There are just so many options today with international books, which I think is really great. And so because of that, books in your first language will be translated into another language, and books in another language will be translated into your first language and stuff like that. But because there is more common to translate books, not all translated titles do the book justice or does not really have anything to do with the original title of the book. And so I wanted to go through 10 books that are translated, 3 books translated from Swedish to English, and 7 books translated from English to Swedish that I think their titles don't really match the original title. Like the translated title doesn't have anything to do with the original title, which I just think it's interesting, and I wanted to discuss it, have a little conversation about that. I am going to go through all of this alphabetically, and the first book we have is Analfabeten som kunde räkna, and what that title means, if I would translate it to English, is The Illiterate Who Could Count. That's literally the title of that. And the English title that was translated from the book, it was actually it was very difficult for me to find this particular book because the translated book came up, but I did not think it was the same book. It's because The Illiterate Who Could Count became The Girl Who Saved the King of Sweden. The Girl Who Saved the King of Sweden, for me, could be a completely different book. Those two have nothing to do with each other. And I thought that because the original title, the title that the author chose, was The Illiterate Who Could Count, and for that to be completely changed into The Girl Who Saved the King of Sweden is a very interesting choice. I think it's interesting that they chose to go that route, and I also that title would never work in Sweden if it was in Swedish. The Girl Who Saved the King of Sweden would never work in Swedish, because we would never say the King of Sweden, we would just say the King. So it makes sense that that title is translated to English. I don't really see a connection between the titles. And I should also say I haven't read the books. I'm just judging these based on the translation of the titles. And I just find it a little bit curious, a little bit interesting. I understand that it's another way to kind of grab attention. I think also for a lot of people internationally who aren't from Sweden, that a girl who saves the king of a country could be very attention grabbing, so I get that. The second book I want to talk about that was translated from Swedish to English is a title that you must have heard if you went on any of these translated titles discussion videos in BookTube. This book comes up almost every time. At least every single video that I have watched where a booktuber is talking about translated works, this title is brought up. And it's Män som hatar kvinnor by Stig Larsson. And that literally means men who hate women. This is also very weird to me because Men Who Hate Women became The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And it's kind of strange. I would love to know what the translator thought. When they decided to translate Men Who Hate Women into The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, I'm curious to know what they were thinking. Not because it's bad or anything, I just think it's an interesting choice, because the book is literally about men who hate women, and it's kind of weird to me that a book about men who hate women called Men Who Hate Women is translated into The Girl something. That is just the thing that I find weird. Someone goes into the book, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and they read a book about men who hate women. It gives a completely other side of the story. The book is about Lisbeth Salander, but not about her. She is an important character, but she's not what the story is about, if that makes sense. So I just find The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I also understand why in some countries Men Who Hate Women wouldn't work. Like, it's not as marketable as The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Like, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, I can see a lot more people picking that book up than internationally, like maybe in conservative parts of the US and Canada and the UK and Ireland, a book called Men Who Hate Women may not sell as well as a book called The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Like, that's my theory, but I don't know. I just think it's a very interesting choice to translate from Men Who Hate Women to The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. The next book is infuriating me. It has nothing to do with anything other than grammar and the lack of understanding Swedish, basic Swedish. And it's Räven och Tomten by Astrid Lindgren, because I have to have Astrid Lindgren on this list. Like, if I talk about Swedish titles, she has to be included. Like, she and Stig Larsson, they have to be included. But Räven och Tomten, this is the translation to English that is the most accurate, because it is the words. I'm just going to go into it. Räven och Tomten literally means the fox and the tomte. The tomte is a Swedish mythical being. It's a creature in Swedish folklore, and we use the same word for this creature as we do for Santa Claus. And so this creature is a symbol of Christmas and Swedish folklore, even though he doesn't have anything to do with Christmas outside of Sweden. Like, in Sweden, he is a symbol. We use the same word for him as we do for Santa Claus or Father Christmas. And so because of that, like, he is a symbol of Christmas. And Räven och Tomten is a Christmas book. But, as I said, Räven och Tomten is the fox and the tomte. The English title of this is The Tomten and the Fox. And the reason this bothers me is because I'm a Swedish teacher, and the Tomten and the Fox literally, like, is the tomte and the fox. That's what it says, because tomten is the tomte in Swedish. Like, tomten is Swedish for the tomte, so the tomten is the tomte and the fox. And that's like the grammar is what's bothering me, because it doesn't, like, the mythical being in Swedish folklore is tomte. The N at the end means that it's that specific tomte. Because in Swedish, we have, just like in English, we have a word before something if it's one of that kind. So en tomte, en. So en, which is before a noun, is at the end of the noun usually. Or at least the last letter in that, like the N is at the end. But en tomte, en. So, you know, like a short grammar lesson. So that's why this made it to this list, because I was just like, oh my god, the tomte and the fox. I just thought it was kind of funny, and it's so weird to me, at least. Like, I know that it's me being a Swedish teacher, but I don't understand how someone could translate a book from Swedish to English and mess that up. Like, that N at the end it changes everything, and it's, yeah. Anyways, let's move on to the books that were originally in English but were translated into Swedish in a way that I find interesting. And again, this is alphabetically. So the first one is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, and this was translated into Livets outgrundliga mysterier. That is the entire title. Like, the title isn't Aristoteles och Dante upptäcker livets outgrundliga mysterier or something like that. It doesn't have Aristotle and Dante at all in the title. The title is only Livets outgrundliga mysterier, which means the unfathomable mysteries of life. I get it. Like, that the title in Swedish is kind of like influenced, I think, by the Discovering the Secrets of the Universe in the original English title. So I can see the connections, but I just thought it was kind of interesting that the book is only called The Unfathomable Mysteries of Life. Because going into a bookstore and seeing that, I wouldn't guess it's Aristotle and Dante. I would just be, oh, this looks fun or something. I would not guess that it's Aristotle and Dante. The next one is Dating You, Hating You by Christina Lauren. Like, I know that in English it's kind of fun, the fact that it's rhyming. Dating You, Hating You. It's just the first letter switched, which I think that's a fun title. In Swedish it's Kär I karriären, which means in love with the career. I don't understand. Like, in love with the career, I understand that. Like, I've read Dating You, Hating You, and it is kind of similar to the hating game. We have two people and they had a hookup, and then they found out that they're working together. Kind of like the first episode of Grey's Anatomy. Kind of like that. And they're like, we can't let people know that we slept together and stuff, and we have to fight each other because we want the same spot in this company, because they work at two different companies and the two companies are merging. And so only one will keep the job. So they have to fight each other to keep their job. That's kind of a very basic summary of the plot of Dating You, Hating You. But I understand, like, in love with the career, Kär I karriären, that the focus in the title is that they're working against each other in, like, because of their careers, that they prioritize their work over a relationship that is romantic. So in love with the career, like, I get it, but the whole thing with Dating You, Hating You is, you know, Dating You, Hating You implies the enemies to lovers thing, which this isn't exactly enemies to lovers. It's more hookup to rivals to lovers. I don't remember exactly if they did hook up, but I know that they met at this masquerade party, both wearing costumes relating to Harry Potter, which is very weird now after everything that's happened. They met, and I don't remember if they hooked up, like if they had sex or anything, but I know that they hit it off, got close, and then, oh my god, we are rivals at two companies that are merging. But Kär I karriären, in love with the career, doesn't really show the rival part. It just shows that it's kind of like a workaholic book. It sounds like it's a workaholic book. Number 3 is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I have not read this book, but I have watched the movie, which unfortunately I regret, because immediately after The Fault in Our Stars, me and my sister, we watched The Fault in Our Stars, and then after it ended, we started Divergent. And the main character in The Fault in Our Stars and her love interest are siblings in Divergent. So that really, like, I have a very, it's very strange to me now. Like, when I think about The Fault in Our Stars, they're siblings in Divergent. And it doesn't make sense. And that's kind of why I don't want to read either book, because they're siblings or together romantically. And just what? But The Fault in Our Stars is translated into Förr eller senare exploderar jag. I would never guess that it's the same story, the same book, but because I have heard so many people mention Förr eller senare exploderar jag that I know it's the same. But Förr eller senare exploderar jag literally means sooner or later I will explode. So The Fault in Our Stars, sooner or later I will explode. Very different. The Swedish title, I understand. Like, I think what the translator was going for is the fact that both our main character and her love interest are cancer patients. One of them is a cancer survivor and the other one is dealing with cancer and is kind of living at a deadline. And so before, sooner or later I will explode has to do with that. So I get that. And The Fault in Our Stars is, you know, an homage kind of to Shakespeare, but they don't have anything in common, really, these two. Apart from, like, a star can explode, like, but that's also a thing, like, titles in original and translated, they don't have to do anything, they don't have to have anything in common with each other to, like, they can tell two different sides of the story. and that's fine. The next book I want to talk about is The Hating Game. This is translated into an allvarsam lek. And what that means is a serious game. So The Hating Game, a serious game. The thing is also that the word lek, it implies that it's more playful, because if game that is a serious game is spel, so had it been like more a serious game, it would have been ett allvarsamt spel. But I think because it's an allvarsam lek, that with the word lek, that it implies that it's serious but still a little bit playful. Like, that's just my interpretation. I know that a lot of people interpret it differently, and also like the person who made that translation from The Hating Game to an allvarsam lek could also be someone who does not come from the same geographical region as me. So maybe lek is more serious where they live in Sweden. I don't know. But to me, lek is more playful. That's kind of like what you do when there's nothing at stake, basically. A serious game, I understand why. Like The Hating Game, a serious game, like I understand the connections between the two. I don't really get the same vibe from the two titles. Like, The Hating Game is like, when you see the title and when you see the cover and you read the title, you can kind of like, okay, so it's hate to love, it's enemies to lovers or rivals to lovers. But with an allvarsam lek, a serious game, kind of feels like it fits more a thriller in my eyes. That sounds a lot more serious. But like, that's just my interpretation. I don't know what else to kind of comment on with that one. So let's move on to the next one. And it's How to Stop Time by Matt Haig, one of my favorite books by Matt Haig. And this, I have talked about this once at least, because I was traveling south, and whenever I travel south, no matter where in southern Sweden, when I say southern Sweden, I mean south of where I live, I have to make a stop at Stockholm. There is like it's almost never that I can take a train that goes further than Stockholm. Like, every single train that I take stops in Stockholm as end station. Apart from one, and that train doesn't go that often. So end station is Stockholm, meaning that if I have to travel further than Stockholm, I have to take another train in Stockholm. I can't just hop on a train here and go all the way. I have to make a stop in Stockholm, and in Stockholm, because of that, I always go to the pocket shop that is on the train station. And I saw this book by Matt Haig called History Teacher, Historieläraren. And I just felt like, so Matt Haig wrote a book about a history teacher. I'm a teacher, and he wrote a book about a teacher. How come I have not read that? So I bought it. I started reading it on the train to go where I was going, and I was very confused, because as I was reading, I just felt like this is very familiar. And then I kept reading, and I kind of felt like, did Matt Haig write the same story twice? And then it dawned on me to check, you know, the little content thing that is in all books, where it says original title, author, publisher, date of publication, and stuff like that. And it said How to Stop Time as original title. And I was like, oh. Because I had no idea that How to Stop Time was history teacher. And I get it, and I kind of like it, because How to Stop Time and history teacher kind of complement each other. And the thing is that with How to Stop Time, it is a book about a man who is 400 years old. He has a condition that is referred to as being an albatross. And it's the fact that your genes, your DNA, not your DNA, your atoms, and like your body, it grows old very slowly. And so because of that, it's kind of like he is out of time. So How to Stop Time is kind of like his condition. He is like, the world keeps moving around him, but he has stopped time. Like, his body is out of time because it doesn't age at a normal rate. So he has been alive since like the 1500s, old. And he is like in the beginning of the book, he becomes a history teacher, and like he just wanted to teach, and he's 40, and he's like in his 40s from our point of view, like people who aren't albatrosses. He is in his 40s, or he looks to be in his 40s, even though he's like 400 years old or 500 years old, something like that. And he becomes a history teacher, and he teaches history, and he does a great job. He was there, like he lived the history that he teaches. And so I do really like that How to Stop Time and History Teacher complement each other, because they tell two sides of the same story. But I do think that How to Stop Time grabs attention better than the history teacher. And the next two we're going with are two dystopians. And first is Mockingjay. And the reason I wanted to go with Mockingjay is because the first two books, Hunger Games and Catching Fire, are basically the same title in Swedish. But Mockingjay is completely different. Mockingjay in Swedish is revolt, which means rebellion. So the whole like the Mockingjay thing, that Katniss is the symbol of the rebellion, the Swedish title is just rebellion. And I just felt that was a very like interesting choice to have. Like I get it that because of that in Swedish it's Hunger Games, Catching Fire, Rebellion. That it's kind of like how the story goes in a way. Yeah, I don't want to say too much because it is a series. Even though I know a lot of people have read it, and if you haven't read it, you may not want to read it at this point, but I don't want to spoil anyways. The next book, the last book we're going to talk about is Shatter Me, the first book in the Shatter Me series by Tahari Mafi. And this is so funny to me because like the thing that the Shatter Me series is kind of iconic for is both the big I on the cover, but also that it's a word and then me. And so it was very interesting to see the Swedish translation for Shatter Me, the first book. It's Rör mig inte, which literally means do not touch me. So Shatter Me becomes do not touch me. Like, yeah, that's what you should not do. If you touch Juliet, who is the main character in Shatter Me, you will feel intense pain and you might die. Yeah, so do not touch me, I understand, because it's literally something you should not do to Juliet. But I just think it's such a weird title to have. Like, you have the iconic titles of the Shatter Me series, and then you go with Rör mig inte. Like, that's just a very like interesting choice, in my opinion. Well, that was it for this video. If you want me to do this kind of thing, but with German titles as well, like German to Swedish, German to English, English to German, whatever, leave a comment down below and let me know, and I can totally make that happen. But until next time, good reading. Bye!